For the past couple of weeks, we have been talking about vital relationships. Vital relationships, starting with our relationship with God and how important that relationship between us and our Creator is. It is the most important relationship in our lives. It's vital. And then last week we moved on to our relationship with others. We talked about how God has, he kind of designed this. When Jesus is asked what the most important commandment is, he tells us, love the Lord your God with all of your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and all your strength. And then he says, and the second is like it, love your neighbor as yourself. And those are two vital relationships. Vital relationships. Today we introduce our final vital relationship. And it's one we don't think about. Our relationship with God. The Bible has plenty to say about the matter, and it seems very important and easy to understand why it's a vital relationship. Same goes for our relationship with other people. We talked about how we are called to forgive, and if we don't forgive, that measure of forgiveness will be shown to us. And God had a lot to say about how we interact with each other, and how we forgive, and how we love. And it's a vital relationship. But our third vital relationship doesn't include us. And it's an interesting thing because a relationship that doesn't include us, and it's almost a relationship that is like meddling. Okay? And it's almost like a meddling relationship. Anybody know a person who fancies themselves a matchmaker? You know that person that's like, oh, those two would be so cute together. They would have adorable babies. Do you know anybody like that? I have people like that in my life. I have people that claim that they did that for Brittany and I, even though they didn't. But there's people in our lives that, you know what, they're meddling. And they're like, I gotta get these two people together. I gotta get this relationship going. And they may not be the Yenta matchmaker from Fiddler, but they're a matchmaker. They're a matchmaker. And sometimes it might be easy to put this person in the category of someone who meddles in other people's relationships. But in fact, Jesus has a lot to say about about others' relationship with him. People more and more seem to say, I'll just worry about me. I will leave other people alone. I'll live my life, they can live theirs, and that will be great. And we try and say, you know what, that's the best way to live. The problem is, for as many scriptures as there are telling us how our relationship should be with God, and for as many scriptures as there are that tell us how our relationship should be with our brother and how we should take care of people and love and forgive and serve, there are just as many scriptures that tell us about how we have a responsibility to people who don't know God. How we have a responsibility to people who are far away from God. In Jesus' final words here on earth, he gives instructions. He sets out on the goal. Really, it makes a lot of sense. If you were about to say the last thing you were going to say to your brother or to a close friend or somebody that you love and deeply care about, you make sure that your words were good. It wouldn't be like, why'd you eat the peanut butter? Those wouldn't be your last words. It would be something important. It would be something that really mattered. Something that you wanted them to live out the rest of their life by. And Jesus, knowing that he was going to heaven, knowing that this was his last chance to influence his disciples, to these men that he has poured into their lives for years now, that this is his last chance to talk to them, his last words to them, chooses to tell them, you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem and Judea and Samaria and to the ends of the earth. Jesus chooses his last words to his disciples to be this commission for his people. It's your job, church. It's your job to go and tell people about Jesus. It's your job not to keep it to yourselves, but to make sure that everybody knows. I love the book of Acts. The book of Acts is all about the church. And it's not just the history of the church, but it's a living book because the church is still going on today. And so it's alive still, and it's still being written. Its purpose is still being fulfilled in our lives and churches across our nation and across our world until every ear has heard that Jesus is the Son of the living God. Until everyone's heard about Jesus, the book of Acts has not ended. And it's still going. And that's why we exist, church. We don't exist because we have nothing better to do on Sunday mornings. We don't exist because we want to be a social club or we want to feel good about ourselves, and so we go to this place. We exist for a purpose of reaching the world for Jesus. We exist to reach everyone with the gospel. That's why the church is here. But whose job is it really? Within the church, whose job is it really to make sure that people know about Jesus? Well, that's the preacher's job, right? That is the preacher's job. It's his job to make sure that people know about Jesus. And it's true. It is the preacher's job, but it's not his job alone. It's the preacher's job, but it's not his job alone. In fact, if it's all up to John and any other preacher you know, millions of people will go to hell. Because we can't do it. The preacher alone can't do it. They can't get to everyone. Because guess what? I don't know your neighbor like you know your neighbor. I don't go to your work and spend time with your coworkers the way that you do. I don't know your friends or your relatives the way that you know your friends and your relatives. And so I play a part, but you do too. And so it's not all up to the preacher. It's not all up to the preacher because he can't get to everyone. And if it's up to the preacher, then millions of people will go to hell. So if it's not up to the preacher, then maybe it's just the really spiritual people. You know the people I'm talking about. The really spiritual people. The people that have it together. They don't sin anymore, right? That's a joke everybody said. The people that have it together. You know the people I'm talking about. The person that you say, hey, they're just about as perfect as can be. It's up to them. They're the ones that need to share. They're the ones that need to tell. I have to tell you, if we're waiting to be perfect before we share what Jesus has done for us, no one will ever hear the message of Jesus again. Because we'll never be there. We will never be perfect. We'll never be good enough to be worthy to carry that message. We'll never get there. And so if we have placed this unreal expectation that, as soon as I cut out this out of my life, as soon as I stop doing this, then I feel like I can tell people about Jesus. As soon as I stop sinning like this, then I can tell people. No! That's not the way it works. If you wait until you are all cleaned up, then you have missed the point. Because by then, you won't have any non-Christian friends because nobody else will want to be around you. And you won't be to the point where you're willing to tell because you're still in this mindset of, I have to be perfect. I have to be better. In fact, scripturally, it's the people who were close to receiving life change that are the best messengers. The people who have recently gone through a change in their life, who have recently said, Jesus, I want you in my life. Jesus, I'm following you now. The people who are closest to that time frame, who are the best messengers. And I see it in church to this day. Because as much as you'd like to say, hey, it's the spiritual giant that knows the Bible and can quote it verse for verse, and they don't sin anymore, they got their life in order. But they don't have any non-Christian friends. They don't know anybody that doesn't already go to church anymore. And they've placed themselves in a place where it is hard for them to share the gospel. But I see day in and day out when people, they come to church, and I can follow these lines when you know what, this person invited somebody to church. And that person started coming, and they got baptized and gave their life to Jesus, and they started bringing their cousin, and they got baptized, and you follow like 5 or 6 lines down the road. And I see it again and again in our church. And it's the people who recently have gone through life change. The people who recently said, I choose Jesus. Because they still are living in a world where there's a lot of people, a lot of friends, a lot of people who don't know Jesus. They're still surrounded. They're still surrounded by people who are living for themselves and don't have a clue who Jesus is. And so all of a sudden, you realize you have the best opportunity to make a difference. So, if it's not the pastors, and it's not just the really holy people, then it's got to be for everyone except me, right? Like, that's what you tell yourself. It's got to be for just not me. Like it's got to be for just chosen people, not me. And you tell yourself this. I can't be the one. I can't be the one. And we hear there are lost people and they're going to hell, and we say, it's not my problem. It's not my problem. It's not our problem. We already found Jesus, so we're all right. We're on the lifeboat, and we're not the ones swimming in the shark-infested waters anymore. The lost aren't my problem. We tell ourselves, other people aren't our business. That relationship doesn't involve me, so I'm not going to butt in. It's not my job to worry about someone else's relationship with Jesus. I'm worrying about my relationship with Jesus and my relationship with others. I'm going to leave that third one alone. I don't want anything to do with it. We say it's not my problem. It's perhaps one of the biggest lies that Christians believe. Truth is, someone else's relationship with Jesus is our problem. God has given us this mandate as the church that makes it our problem. God has given us the duty of snatching souls from the fire, of rescuing the lost, of sharing His word and teaching His love so that none might be lost. Matthew chapter 28, verse 19. Go therefore and make disciples of all the nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you. And lo, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. God has sent His people on a mission. We have a direction. We have a direct directive from Him that we are to change the world we live in by going and telling people about Jesus and what He's done in our lives and how He's made a difference. We're to be world changers and the shapers of men and women's lives. We're to introduce them to a life-saving relationship with Jesus Christ that will change the world. God has sent us to save the lost, to reach out to the morally bankrupt world, to seek those who have fallen away and those who have never known Him in the first place. And you know people, and they're in your life today. But you may wonder, how will I know who He wants me to go to? How will I know if this is the person I'm supposed to share with? How will I know if that person is? I make you this promise today. Make you this promise. You will never look upon the face of somebody that Jesus does not love and does not desire to be in a relationship with. There's nobody in your life. There's nobody that you'll ever come face to face with. There's nobody you'll ever look at that God doesn't want. That includes the person that is a chain smoker and can't work for more than 5 minutes before taking a break. It includes the person that is always cussing at your work. It includes your family member who drives you nuts and always wants to talk politics. It includes everybody that you come in contact with in your life. There is no one on this planet that God doesn't love, that He doesn't want. And God can and will use you if you're willing. Sadly, even in this Christian nation, even in this place, for one reason or another, there's so many lost people. So many people don't know Him. So many people either say, I know I should go to church, but I don't know, just never got invited, never found the right time. Or there are people that, I thought I wanted to know Jesus, but I had a bad experience, and so I just cut it away. And time, everybody's got a reason. But there's a reason why so many people are far away from God. We have, and I tell you, we have to change that. We have to change that. We haven't prayed for the lost the way we should. Instead, we've judged them for the sin. We haven't gone to the lost in the name of Jesus. Instead, we've tried to change them by legislating morality and making our nation a godly nation. I tell you, laws don't make people right with their God. Making things illegal and certain things illegal doesn't change people's hearts. Jesus changes hearts. We can't help the lost find Jesus without going to them and sharing with them what Jesus has done and showing them love and telling them what He wants to do for them. Jesus says in verse 2 of Luke chapter 11, "The harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore, beseech the Lord of the harvest to send out more laborers into the harvest." In this farming community, we understand what that's like. Harvest comes around, and there's not enough hours in the day, and there's not enough hands, there's not enough man hours to bring it in. You can't do it quick enough. We're so anxious, we just want to get it in. Get the harvest in, get the harvest in. And Jesus uses the same analogy when it comes to the lost around us. He says, look at this world and it's ready for harvest. Look at the people around you. Their lives are waiting to come to Jesus. We need more people willing to go to them. We need more people who are willing to say, I will share. I'll invite. I'll do my part. I'll just say, hey, come to church with me. I'll invite them to something that I have going on there. I'll give them the chance. Jesus sends us out as laborers. And the job is momentous. It's huge, and we need more. We need more people to go. When Jesus ascended into heaven, he left the job of reaching the world to his disciples, and that has been passed on to us. Through the generations, that is the church's job, to reach the world. And I tell you, there's no backup. If we fail, there is no backup. I want you to think about this for a minute. You might be the only person who ever shares with your brother. You might be the only person who ever shares with that coworker. You might be the only one who's ever invited them to church and said, hey, come here. Come listen. Come be a part. You might be the only one who's ever done it, and there is no second chance. Jesus isn't going to come back in the end and open up heaven and say, see, here I am, now you can believe. He gave that job to the church. He said, get it done. This is plan A. There is no plan B. Reach the world. This job is life or death. We aren't just messing around here talking about joining some club, and if you don't, nothing bad happens to you. No, when we deal with the lost, we are dealing with eternal beings. We're dealing with souls burning in hell or standing before Jesus in glory. Everything is at stake when we reach out to the lost. We must try. We must share. The worst thing that we can do is keep silent and say it's none of my business. When I was in college, I had a professor named David Haynes. He was here a couple months ago. And I love David Haynes. He is just a wonderful guy. And I remember the first day of class. And this new preaching professor comes into the class and he stands at his little podium pulpit. And we're sitting in there and we're in our third year of Bible college, so we know it all already. So we're sitting there and he comes in and he lays out he always comes in with a 3-ring binder. He lays out his 3-ring binder. And he looks at us and he says, do you know the value of one human soul? And those words, we just sat there stunned and silent. We didn't know what to say. We know how to develop sermons and how to build sermon series, and we know how to do all this stuff. But he just asked us a question that's way harder than any of that. Do you know the value of one human soul? And I tell you, those words have haunted me and inspired me and guided me through ministry. Do you know the value of one human soul? It's worth everything. He finally shouted at us, it's worth everything. It's worth everything that you can say. It's worth everything that you can do. Jesus died on the cross for that human soul. Jesus said, it's worth my death. And I tell you, it's worth everything to this day. It's worth everything that you can say. It's worth everything that you can do. Because a human soul is worth everything. So I wonder, what about your neighbor's soul? What about your coworker's soul? What about your sister's soul or your cousin's soul? What about that stranger that you don't even know? What about the people all around you? It's worth everything. Their soul is worth everything you can say and everything you can do to share the love of Jesus. When we share our faith, I want to make this clear. It is not hey, I got my life together and you're a mess. That's not what we're doing. That is not the mentality that we go with to share our faith. When we share our faith, the best thing I've ever heard on evangelism is this. Evangelism is one beggar telling another beggar where to find food. It is simply saying, hey, I'm a mess, but I found Jesus. And He takes my mess and He makes it better. And you're not going and saying, hey, I've got my life together and I don't need anything anymore, but you're a mess, so you should go to church. It's not what it is. and saying, I'm a sinner and you're a sinner, and every sinner that has ever walked the face of this earth needs Jesus. And I wonder how cowardly, how awful would it be for us to keep that message to ourselves. We do it every day, though. We say another time, not me, or have somebody else, or we worry about them getting offended or getting mad. But to be honest, when we hold back, it's the least loving thing we could ever do. I've become convinced the reason we don't share the good news, the reason we don't share about Jesus, the reason we don't invite people to church is because we don't love them enough. We don't love them enough to make a moment uncomfortable by talking about God. We don't love them enough that we care whether they go to hell or heaven. We don't love them enough to share the one thing that changes lives and sets captives free. We don't love them enough to take it deeper than talking about whether the corn is 18% moisture or whatever. We don't love them enough to go deeper. We don't love them enough to share what our Savior did for us and how we are changed because of it. Say, well, you will, but when we refuse to share, it's either we don't love them enough or possibly something even scarier. It's that we don't believe that He did something great for us. Either we don't love them enough to share, or we don't believe that what Jesus did for us was all that important. And I tell you, that is a terrifying alternative. Because Jesus gave all. Because Jesus gave all for us. A lost world awaits when we walk out those doors. Your neighbors, your friends, your loved ones. What are we going to do about it? They're waiting to know, do you really love them? Do you love them enough to talk about something deeper? Do you love them enough to talk about more than football and more than crops? Do you love them enough that you will share with them or that you'll invite them to church so that they might hear? A world is wondering, do you know the value of my soul? Do you know how much that girl in your class is worth in the eyes of Jesus? Do you know how valuable that person who's always swearing at work is to God? Do you know how valuable the soul of one lost person is? Jesus tells His disciples parables. He says, I leave the 99 sheep to find the one that's lost. He says that they're so valuable. He says we search diligently and sweep the whole house to find the lost coin, never minding that we have others. We look for the one that's lost. He tells the story of a lost son. Father has more than one son, but the one that's lost, He never forgets. And His eyes are always on the horizon for the day when the son will return home. I tell you, we have a God who cares about the lost. Folks, we have a mission. We are the church. We are world changers, life rearrangers. We have a message of hope and transformation to a world that is in desperate need of real hope. And so today I wonder, will you look at the people around you and realize the value of their soul to your God? Will you realize that you have a job in other people's relationship with God? Will you look at them and say, I'm going to share this week. I'm going to invite them to come to church with me. I'm going to say, hey, you want to come to Bible study? Let today be the day that you look at your neighbors and your coworkers and your friends and even your enemies through the eyes of our God. And you see the value of their soul. Because that person is worth everything. So church, what are you going to do? Last week, or 2 weeks ago, we had white pieces of paper in our bulletin. And we talked about our relationship with God. And we wrote prayers and we wrote messages to God about how we need to get our relationship with Him right. Last week we had blue sheets of paper in our bulletin, and we talked about our relationship with other people, and we wrote messages saying, hey, I need to ask forgiveness from, or I need to give forgiveness to, I need to make this relationship right. Today you have green sheets of paper in your bulletin. And today I'm looking for names. Today will you write a name or two or three or however many are on your heart? Will you write some names of people that God has placed upon your heart and said, you need to talk to, that you need to share with? During these next few songs or after the service, if you're more comfortable, come and place it in this chicken wire. Come and place it next to this cross. Come and place it here. And remember the value of their soul. Do something about it. Who has God put in your life that you can influence? Who can you invite to church or small group? In the relationship of others and God, who is on your heart? Write a name and put it on the wire. Commit it to God this week. In church, it's time to go to work. As the praise team comes up, would you stand with us? We're going to sing a song called Reckless Love, and in it are some lyrics about Him leaving the 99. That is our God's heart, that He will leave it all to find the lost one. I pray that we have that same heart, that we can echo that in our own lives.